Hi there, Andrew. Yeah, travel demand is soaring and travel insurance is also in high demand. Online broker Squaremouth, which is kind of like Kayak for travel insurance, says 30% of its policies are now bought specifically to cover issues related to coronavirus. And sales are skyrocketing. July numbers up 67% above the same period in 2019.
There's certainly been an increase in awareness, a huge change to our demographic. Our average traveler is about 10 years younger than they were before COVID.
The biggest insurers in the field are AIG, which said on its earnings call that premiums have increased for travel insurance, and Allianz. Allianz told us it has seen a 15% increase in interest in travel insurance, but a 75% spike in claims since the pandemic began. It now offers policies that will cover not just an instance where travelers get sick with coronavirus, but if travelers test positive or have to quarantine. Other insurers offer similar coverage, but only under cancel for any reason policies. And Squaremouth tells us those policies typically cost 40% more than just your standard average check the box when you're buying the trip policy.
So
Andrew?
The question we've all asked about travel insurance is how easy is it to get your money back or to get the insurance paid to you? What does it really require?
I mean, you got to read the fine print, right? If you've got a policy that doesn't cover quarantine, it may cover you if you get sick and end up in the hospital with coronavirus. But if you have to quarantine for 14 days in a hotel at your destination, that's an expensive cost to shoulder, and especially one that a lot of families wouldn't plan on for their leisure travel. So it pays to read the fine print and see what is actually covered. And if you go through those details, and boy, is insurance policies, they're fun to read, right? But when you go through it, if you find out that a quarantine isn't covered or you're not covered in terms of a border closure or a travel advisory, then you might opt to pay the additional money for that cancel for any reason policy.
What kind of rates are we talking? That's what I also want to know. How much is this going to cost?
I mean, it really
He just bought it.
A lot.
We actually,
a lot.
Contessa, you may be an expert, but we also have another expert here at the table because you just bought some.
I did. I did. I bought travel insurance for the first time in my life, Contessa. And in fact, I bought it through Squaremouth.
But did you have to?
I didn't have to buy the insurance.
Like some
but
destinations are now requiring it.
No, I did it for peace of mind. But as I learned, now, sure, you could pay, and as you said, the cancel for any reason is 40% more generally, where you can obviously cancel for any reason. But otherwise, even if you're paying, let's say, $800 for a policy like I did, you're really only going to be able to use the insurance if you test positive for COVID when you are somewhere, whether you get sick with it or not. If you're COVID positive, then you're going to have a better chance of being able to actually use the insurance. What I found out, and I haven't gone on my trip yet, but if you go and let's say travel restrictions get put in place, you have to, there's a curfew or you have to quarantine or whatever, that's not going to be covered. If you have to miss out on nights and days in this city or that city, that is not generally going to be covered under your travel insurance policy unless you get COVID and that causes you to actually miss part of your trip. It's an eye-opening experience. I have to tell you, my finger was shaking as I was pushing the enter button when I was putting my credit card information because I was like, I don't want to pay, I don't want to pay, I don't want to pay, but I want the peace of mind, so I'm going to pay.
But look, Scott, the insurers have turned themselves inside out to come up with a product and a policy that meets these new requirements. I mean, previous to the pandemic, they didn't have policies in place that could cover those contingencies, which is why when the CDC issued warnings or when border closures happened, there was no coverage because it was something that's unprecedented. They've gone back to the table. They've crafted new policies and new coverage. Are you going to pay for that kind of coverage? Yes. And the other thing to point out is the cancel for any reason policy. It may not cover 100% of your costs, but what we know is if you get stuck at a destination for an extra two weeks, you're going to shoulder the whole cost without travel insurance.
Right. The cancel for any reason policy generally, as I understand it, only covers maybe 70 to 80%, not 100%. Exactly. So while you're paying 40% more on top of an already large amount of money, you're still not going to get all of your money back if you cancel for what they say is any reason. And I should also add, if you know, when you shop around and you see the recommendations, I bought a really highly recommended policy that was vetted, and you still better read the fine print to understand truly what your benefits are going to be if you have an issue, particularly overseas, where the costs can get exorbitant if you have to, say, stay for more days than you planned because somebody in your family or your traveling party happens to test positive and you're unable to fly back. The airlines, by the way, I think are really strict that if you test positive, for example, you know, I think wherever you are, and I'm not 100% certain on the exact number of days, but like United, for example, you're not allowed to fly on their planes for multiples of days after you test positive. So you could be talking multiple nights that you didn't plan to be in a particular city where it's in the United States or around the world, where you're going to have to cover the cost in your travel policy. Who knows?
There is no insurance, though, for having to be stuck for 2 weeks in a hotel room with small children because you're quarantined. You cannot go anywhere because you're quarantined.
I'm hoping I never have to use my policy. Let's put it that way. So
we're hoping.
Peace of mind.
We're hoping. We're hoping for you. We're hoping for you. Contessa Brewer, have a great weekend. Thank you.